a calm, historical journey through the cold months of the past. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more boring history videos. Thank you. The change doesn't happen all at once. There is no single morning where you wake up to find the world transformed into a frozen wonderland. In the medieval world, winter creeps in like a careful thief, quiet, steady, patient. Summer light is bold and golden, pouring into the fields long after supper. Autumn light softens, warming everything in an amber glow. But now the sun feels different. It doesn't spill into your home as it used to. It peeks in late, lingers less, and slips away as though it has better places to be. By the time you finish your evening bread, the cottage is already sinking into darkness. And darkness in these times is not just the absence of light, it's the presence of something else. Something heavier. Without lanterns burning whale oil, without endless candles, without the glow of a screen, the night feels like it has weight. It presses against the shutters. It breathes through the cracks in the walls. It wraps around the village in silence. You notice the air next. It's sharper, with a taste you can't quite name, part earth, part frost, part smoke from the chimneys. The breeze that once danced lazily through the trees now has teeth. It bites at your cheeks, seeps through your wool tunic, and steals the warmth from your fingertips. You breathe in, and the cold scratches at your throat before settling deep in your lungs. The earth itself begins to change. The soil under your boots feels harder. Grass loses its green and turns brittle. The last stubborn leaves curl into themselves like tiny fists. The river that runs by the edge of the village moves slower, its edges collecting thin crusts of ice in the early mornings. You know that by midwinter, that water will be solid enough to walk on, not that you'd want to. Inside your home, the cold is no stranger. Stone floors hold the chill like a memory. The wooden walls do little to keep out the drafts. A single fireplace sits at the heart of the cottage, its blackened stones stained with years of smoke. You keep the fire going, not because you like the way it looks, but because letting it go out would be dangerous. Fire takes time to start again, and in the deep of winter, every moment without heat is a risk. In the early hours, when you wake before the sun, you can see your breath hanging in the air. The embers in the hearth have dimmed to a dull orange. You pull the thin wool blanket tighter around your shoulders as you stir them back to life, coaxing the flames as though they were stubborn children. Your fingers ache as they work. They always do when the cold sets in. Your clothes are the same ones you've worn for seasons. A thick wool tunic, patched so many times you've lost count. Breeches that feel stiff in the morning, softening only after you've worn them for hours. Your boots are leather, cracked and weathered, stuffed with bits of cloth to keep out the cold. Gloves are a luxury you don't have. You settle for wrapping your hands in strips of fabric when you must work outside for too long. The sound of winter is unlike any other. It's quieter. The birds have gone. The insects are gone. The fields that once hummed with life are still. You can hear the creak of frozen branches in the wind, the crunch of frost underfoot, the occasional distant bark of a dog. Even the village feels muted. The laughter of children is rare. They're kept indoors where it's warmer. The chatter between neighbors happens quickly, voices low, each person eager to return to the comfort of their hearth. This quietness is not peaceful. It's tense. Everyone feels it, even if they don't say it aloud. Winter is not a gentle season here. It doesn't forgive mistakes. If you didn't store enough grain, you will go hungry. If your firewood runs out, you will freeze. If sickness takes hold, there's little that can be done. You remember the preparations you made months ago during the harvest. The sacks of barley and rye stored high on wooden shelves to keep them from rats. The salted meat hanging in the cool, dark corner of the storeroom. The baskets of onions, garlic, and turnips, hearty vegetables that can survive the months ahead. You pray it will be enough. But food is only part of the battle. The real challenge is endurance. Winter asks you to endure the cold, the dark, the monotony. Day after day of the same meals, the same walls, the same fire. You work when you can, mending clothes, repairing tools, carving handles, weaving baskets, anything to keep your hands busy and your mind from slipping into despair. As you step outside that first true winter morning, you take in the scene around you. Frost coats the ground in delicate crystals, glittering faintly under the pale sun. Your breath puffs out in clouds, drifting away into the stillness. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster calls, its voice sharp against the cold air. The village is waking slowly. A neighbor trudges past, bundled in furs, carrying an armful of firewood. Smoke curls lazily from a few chimneys. The smell of baking bread reaches you faintly, a reminder that not all mornings are hopeless, that some warmth can still be found in the midst of this season. Yet, beneath it all, you feel the weight of the months ahead. You know that this morning, crisp and beautiful as it is only the beginning. The real test will come when the snow is waist deep, when the stores are running low, when the nights stretch on so long they feel endless. And so you pull your cloak tighter, adjust the scarf around your neck, and take a deep breath. The first breath of winter. Cold, sharp, unforgiving, and necessary. Because in this world, winter is not something to avoid, it's something to survive. Hunger in a medieval winter isn't the kind that can be eased with a quick walk to the market. It's not an inconvenience, it's a shadow that follows you from the moment the frost sets in until the first shoots of green break through the thawed earth in spring. The entire summer and autumn, every action you took was a conversation with the coming winter. Every handful of grain stored away, every pig slaughtered, every onion braided into long dangling ropes, these were not just chores. They were promises you made to yourself. I will eat when the snow comes. Now, the snow is coming. The pantry is a small, cold room built into the side of the cottage where the sun never touches it directly. Its wooden door creaks on rough iron hinges. Inside, the air is still and smells faintly of earth, smoke, and dry grain. There's no luxury here, no sweet fruits from distant lands, no bright jars of preserves lined up for decoration. Everything is plain. Everything is necessary. Along one wall, great sacks of barley, rye, and oats lean against the timber, their coarse cloth tied shut with lengths of rope. You run your fingers over the fabric, rough and reassuring. Inside those sacks are the makings of bread, porridge, and broth. Bread will be dense and dark, heavy with grain husks, not the airy white loaves of a wealthy man's table. But it will fill your stomach, and in winter, that matters more than taste. On another wall, rows of turnips, carrots, and parsnips sit in woven baskets. They're firm, earthy smelling, their skins still clinging to a bit of soil. Some are small and twisted, others fat and heavy. They've been chosen carefully. Only the best keep through the cold months without rotting. Even so, you check them often, running your hands over them in the dim light, searching for the soft spots that mean decay has begun. One bad root can spoil a basket. Hanging from the rafters, braided ropes of onions and garlic sway gently in the draft. They're more than food, they're protection. Their pungent smell is believed to keep sickness at bay, and in a place where winter illness can turn deadly, such beliefs are not taken lightly. You slice them into stews, bake them into bread, and sometimes eat them raw when you feel a fever coming on. Against the far wall, the meat hangs. Thick slabs of pork and beef, smoked until they're dark as oak bark. Their surfaces are hardened, their edges white with salt. You cut from them sparingly, a small piece here, a scrap there, to flavor broths or give a little strength to an otherwise plain meal. Meat is precious. If you eat too much too quickly, you'll have none left before the thaw. The fish is different. It doesn't hang in the pantry, it's stored in barrels, layered in salt. When you open one, the smell is sharp and briny, a reminder of the summer days when nets were heavy and the sun warmed your back. Now, that fish will become a winter feast when boiled with herbs or eaten with hard bread. The grain store is the heart of your winter diet. In the mornings, you take a small scoop of oats or barley and boil them into porridge over the hearth. The porridge is thick and sticks to the spoon. Sometimes you stir in a little honey, if you're lucky enough to have it, or a splash of milk from the goat before she dries up in the deep cold. This breakfast is not indulgent, it's fuel. At midday, you eat bread. Always bread. Dark, heavy loaves that you tear apart with your hands. You dip the bread in thin broth made from boiling vegetable peels and bones. If there's a bit of meat left over from the night before, it's a blessing. Most days, it's just bread and broth, maybe with a pinch of herbs you dried in summer. Thyme, sage, rosemary. Supper is the same, a stew of whatever can be spared from the store. A turnip here, an onion there, a slice of salted pork for flavor. The broth is thickened with a handful of barley or oats. The smell fills the cottage, rich and comforting, and for a moment the cold feels far away. But every meal comes with a calculation. If you eat too much now, will there be enough later? If you save too much, will you grow too weak to work? This balance between eating enough to survive the day and saving enough to survive the season is the unspoken rhythm of winter life. You think of the less fortunate in the village. The widow who lost her husband in the harvest and has no one to hunt for her. The old man whose hands shake too much to sew the sacks shut tight. The family whose grain store was raided by rats in the first week of frost. You've seen what hunger does to people. It makes them desperate. It makes them dangerous. In the dead of night, when the wind howls outside and the fire burns low, you sometimes hear the creak of a door or the crunch of snow underfoot. It could be the wind. It could be a fox. Or it could be someone slipping through the shadows, hoping to find your pantry door unbarred. That's why you keep it locked, not with a fancy metal key, those are for the wealthy, but with a thick wooden beam across the frame. The fight against hunger is not only in the food you store. It's in how you protect it. It's in the way you stretch every scrap to its limit. It's in the quiet prayers you send up when you measure the grain and realize it's a little less than you thought. Some winters are kind, with shorter snows and mild winds. Others are cruel, weeks of storms that bury the village in white and freeze the river solid. You never know which kind you'll face until you're already in the middle of it. And so, each day, you eat just enough. Not to feel full. Fullness is a luxury you can't afford, but enough to feel steady on your feet. Enough to keep your hands from trembling when you lift the axe to split firewood. Enough to rise from bed in the morning without feeling dizzy. That is survival, not comfort. Not abundance, just enough. Cold in the medieval world is not like the cold we know now. It isn't something you push back with a twist of a thermostat. It isn't softened by insulated walls or double-paned glass. Here, the cold is a living thing. It creeps, it presses, it waits. It does not simply chill you. It wears you down, day after day, until even the strongest feel their bones ache with its weight. Your only real weapon against it is fire. But fire is not a given. It must be coaxed, fed, and guarded. In the depths of winter, letting your fire die is a mistake that can cost you dearly, sometimes even your life. The hearth is the heart of the home. It is not just where you cook, it is where you live. The stones are blackened with years of smoke, the soot settling thick in the corners. A great iron pot hangs from a hook, ready to hold stew or boil water. Beside it, a pile of kindling waits. Twigs, dried moss, shaved curls of wood that catch quickly. Behind that is the real fuel. Logs split and stacked, their ends pale and rough from the axe's bite. You keep your fire alive as though it were a child. In the morning, before anything else, you kneel by the hearth and stir the embers. Your fingers are stiff, your breath puffing in small clouds. The coals glow faintly, not gone, but close. You feed them with thin twigs, bending close to breathe life into them. A faint orange spark becomes a flicker, then a flame. Slowly, it grows, licking at the dry wood you place on top. Only when the fire is steady do you begin your day. The cold outside is relentless. When you step out to fetch more firewood, it greets you instantly, a biting, almost physical push against your skin. Your breath hangs in the air like smoke. Every sound is sharper in the cold. The crunch of snow beneath your boots, the creak of frozen branches, the distant bark of a dog. Your hands ache even inside wool wrappings, and you move quickly to the woodpile. The woodpile is your treasure. Each log stacked here was cut in warmer months, split and left to dry under a simple roof to keep off the rain. You remember the labor of it, the weight of the axe, the thud as it struck, the sweat on your back even in the cool of early autumn. Without that work, you would have nothing to burn now. And without something to burn, you would not last long. Every log you take is a calculation. The pile must last until spring. But on the coldest nights, you burn through more than you want, too. The wind finds its way into the smallest cracks of the cottage, curling around your ankles, sliding under the blanket on your bed. If the fire falters, the cold takes its place without hesitation. Some people in the village use peat, blocks of decomposed plant matter dug from the bogs and dried in the sun. It burns slower than wood, giving a steady heat, though its smoke is thick and heavy. Others gather bundles of sticks from the forest, trading them for bread or grain. You, like most, rely on a mix: good logs for the bitter nights, smaller scraps for the daytime. In the deep heart of winter, the cold doesn't just stay outside. It finds you indoors. The walls of your cottage are made of wattle and daub, woven sticks covered in a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung. They keep out the worst of the wind, but they cannot keep out the chill entirely. The floor is stone, cold to the touch from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep. So you live close to the fire. Your stool sits beside it, your work table within arm's reach. You cook there, mend clothes there, sharpen tools there. The children, if you have them, play in the small circle of warmth it gives. At night, you sleep as near to it as you can without risking sparks on the blanket. Clothing helps, but only so much. Wool tunics, cloaks lined with fur, thick stockings, they keep the worst of the cold off your skin, but the air still seeps through. And if your clothes get wet, from snow or from the damp that rises in the air, the chill sinks deep and takes hours to dry out. That's when fire becomes more than comfort. It becomes survival. The smell of the fire is always with you. The smoke clings to your hair, your clothes, the very walls of your home. Your hands smell faintly of char when you touch your face. When you step outside, you can smell which houses have their fires going and which are struggling. The scent of burning wood is the scent of life in winter. There is a constant awareness, even in the warm glow of the hearth, that the fire is temporary. It must be fed, and you must have something to feed it. If your wood runs out before the snow melts, the cold will win. In the nights when the wind howls like a beast, rattling the shutters and sweeping snow against the door, you sit closer to the flames, pulling your cloak tight, feeling the warmth on your face and the cold on your back. The fire becomes your companion, your protector. But fire can betray you too. A spark in the wrong place, a log that rolls unexpectedly, and your home could be gone in minutes. You never leave it untended for long. In a world where rebuilding in winter is almost impossible, caution is your constant companion. And so the battle is fought, day after day, you and the fire against the cold. The cold is patient. It will wait, but as long as you have wood to burn and the strength to tend the flames, you can hold it back. In spring, when the first warm breeze slips through the shutters, the fire will burn lower. You'll let the embers die, and for a while, you'll live without its constant glow. But you'll never forget the months when it was the only thing standing between you and the long, frozen dark. Fire is life in winter, but you can't carry the hearth with you. There are long stretches of the day when you must leave its glow behind, to fetch water from the well, to tend the animals, to walk the frozen road to the mill. In those moments, your only shield against the cold is what you wear. And in a medieval winter, clothing is not fashion. It is armor. The first layer is always linen. Even in winter, it is the closest thing to your skin. Linen breathes. It wicks away moisture, and most importantly, it doesn't hold dampness the way wool does. A damp underlayer can kill you faster than the cold itself. It draws heat from your body until your bones ache. So you start with a simple tunic, loose but long enough to reach mid-thigh, the sleeves falling to your wrists. It is plain, off-white, and worn thin from years of use, but it does its job. Over that comes the wool. Wool is the king of winter fabrics, thick, warm, and stubborn against the cold. You pull on your heavy woolen tunic, rough against your arms, smelling faintly of lanolin from the sheep it came from. It's not soft like modern wool. It has a scratch that keeps you aware of it. But you don't mind. That scratch is the feeling of warmth holding steady. If the cold is biting hard, you add another layer, a sleeveless wool overtunic that traps the heat your body gives off. This isn't luxury. This is survival layering, building pockets of warm air between the fabrics. You know that once you step outside, every bit of heat you hold will try to escape. Your legs are no less important. Woolen hose cling to them, tied at the waist with simple cords. The fabric is thick but flexible enough to let you work. In the harshest days, you wear two pairs, the inner one slightly thinner so the outer can bear the brunt of the frost. Over them, you might wear chausses, extra leggings if you have them. Feet are the hardest to keep warm. Your boots are made of leather, stitched by hand, their soles thick but not impenetrable. Inside, you line them with scraps of wool cloth or straw to keep the frost from seeping through. Each step on frozen ground sends a dull, biting cold up into your calves. If snow gets inside, the wetness begins its quiet, dangerous work, numbing, chilling, threatening frostbite if you don't dry them quickly. Then comes the cloak. A winter cloak is more than a covering. It is your portable shelter. Made from thick wool, sometimes lined with fur if you're fortunate, it wraps around your entire body, fastened at the shoulder with a simple brooch. In storms, you pull it over your head, letting it shield your face from the stinging wind. It is heavy. You can feel its weight on your shoulders, but its warmth is worth every ounce. The hood is another necessity. Separate from the cloak, it drapes over your head and neck, extending to your shoulders. It traps heat where you lose it fastest, and its front can be pulled across your face when the wind is merciless. You breathe into the wool, feeling the fabric grow damp from your breath, but it's still better than breathing air so cold it burns. Your hands are the most difficult to protect. Gloves are not common for most villagers. Leather is too costly, and wool wears through quickly with work. Instead, you wrap strips of fabric around your hands, layer upon layer, until your fingers are bundled together like roots in a sack. You lose dexterity, but at least the skin won't crack and bleed from the cold. Every piece of clothing has been patched, mended, and remended. A tear is stitched before it can widen. A worn spot is reinforced with another scrap of fabric, even if it doesn't match. There's no shame in it. In winter, patched clothing is a sign of care, of someone taking the time to keep what little they have working. When you move outside, you move differently in this armor of cloth. Your steps are slower, heavier. The layers muffle sound. Your own heartbeat becomes the loudest thing you hear. The wool rubs against itself with a faint, constant whisper. You can feel your breath trapped inside the hood, your body heat curling back against you in a faint, humid pocket. But the cold still finds ways in, through the gaps at your wrists, through the space between your boots and hose, down your collar if the wind shifts suddenly. The cold is patient. It looks for these small openings and presses through them. Without fire, clothing becomes your last defense. When you work in the fields to break ice from the water troughs, when you walk the frozen road to trade for salt, when you hunt through the snow-covered forest, your layers keep you alive. But they cannot keep you comfortable. You never truly feel warm without the hearth. What you feel instead is the constant balance between cold and not cold enough to kill. At night, when the fire burns low, you sleep in these clothes. Not in a soft bed, but on a straw mattress, pulling every blanket you own over yourself. Sometimes you sleep in your cloak too, especially when the frost creeps in through the shutters. In the morning, the fabric is stiff with cold, and pulling it back on is an act of will. The wealthy have furs, fox, hare, even wolf, sewn into the linings of their cloaks and tunics. These keep out the cold better than anything else, but they are far beyond the reach of most. For common folk, wool is everything. Sheep's wool, spun and woven by hand, dyed with whatever plants will take to the fibers, and worn until it falls apart. You remember when each piece came into your home. The hose spun by your mother years ago. The tunic traded for a basket of eggs and a sack of barley. The cloak, made from the wool of sheep you once helped shear, its warmth a memory of summer pasture. Each has a story, and each carries you one more day through the frozen season. You know that when spring comes, some of these clothes will be too worn to save. The patches will give way. The fabric will fray beyond repair. But for now, every stitch holds the cold at bay. And that is enough. Water is so simple in summer. You walk to the stream, the river, the well, and there it is, running, trickling, spilling over stones. Clear, cold, endless. But in winter, water becomes something you must work for. Something you must take from the grip of the cold. The first morning the well freezes is the moment you know the easy days are over. The village well is a circle of stone, its edges worn smooth by years of hands resting there, buckets scraping past. In summer, the rope runs freely over the beam, lowering the bucket into the cool darkness until it splashes. But now, when you lean over and peer down, the darkness is met with silence. No splash, only the faint shimmer of ice where the surface has stiffened. If the frost is light, you can break it with the bucket itself, letting it punch through the thin layer. But when the deep winter sets in, the ice thickens. Then you must break it first, leaning over with a wooden pole or the blunt side of an axe, striking until the sound changes, that deep, hollow crack of ice giving way to water. Every drop you haul up feels heavier than it did in the warm months. Not just because of the cold, but because of what it took to get it. Your hands burn against the rope, the fibers rough and frozen, and when the wind blows, the chill runs down your neck and into your back. For those who live near a river, winter changes it completely. The water slows, stiffens, until a glassy skin forms over it. At first, it's fragile, breaking into jagged edges with a sharp sound when struck. But week after week, the ice thickens. Soon, it's a pale, milky white sheet you can stand on. And while that's dangerous in itself, it also means the water beneath is locked away. Fetching river water becomes an act of cutting into the earth itself. You kneel on the frozen surface, tools in hand, an axe, a chisel, sometimes just the heaviest stick you own, and begin to break through. The ice resists, each blow sending vibrations up your arms until your hands go numb. Finally, a crack forms, then another, and a dark hole opens to reveal the water below. You reach in with the bucket quickly before the edges can freeze again, and the water that comes up is alive. It smokes in the air, warmer than the world above it. It smells faintly of silt and plants, of the life sleeping beneath. When you drink it, it tastes sharper, as though the cold itself has seeped into it. Inside the home, you keep water in wooden or clay vessels. In the coldest nights, even this water can freeze, a thin sheet forming over the top by morning. You break it with your hand, the shock of it biting your skin, before you pour it into the pot for cooking. But in truth, most of the water you drink in winter comes from snow and ice melted by the fire. It's a slow, patient process. You take handfuls of clean snow, not the gray, trampled snow from the road, but the fresh fall from open ground, and place it in the iron pot above the flames. At first, it sizzles faintly where the heat touches it, then it collapses into nothing, leaving only a thin layer of water at the bottom. You keep adding more and more because snow melts into far less water than you expect. The sound of melting snow is quiet, almost secret. It's a soft hiss, a sigh, a faint whisper of steam escaping into the air. The first cup is always for drinking. Warm, plain water, cupped in your hands and sipped slowly, feeling it spread heat through your chest. The rest goes into the cooking pot, into the dough for bread, into whatever broth will become the evening meal. For those lucky enough to have stored rainwater in barrels before the freeze, there is a small advantage. The barrels, if kept in a sheltered place, freeze slower than open wells or rivers. But even then, you often find a crust of ice you must break each time you draw from it. And there is another problem. Water is heavy. Carrying it through the snow is no small task. 2 buckets on a yoke across the shoulders might mean 50 or 60 pounds to bear, and in winter, the path is never smooth. Your boots sink. Your breath grows ragged, the cold air cutting your throat. Sometimes, the water sloshes over the rim and freezes instantly against the wood of the bucket. Without water, you cannot cook, you cannot drink, you cannot wash the filth from your hands after tending animals or gutting fish. So every day, no matter the wind or the snow, someone must fetch it. The wealthy have servants to do this work. But for most, it's your own back that bends, your own hands that grip the rope, your own boots that tread the icy path. There are dangers too. Ice on the river can break without warning, sending you into water so cold it shocks the breath from your lungs. People have died this way, not from drowning, but from the cold stealing their strength before they can climb back out. Even at the well, frost can build on the stone edge, making you slip if you lean too far. You learn to respect the water in winter. It gives you life, but it will not give it easily. You must work for it, break through the barriers the season puts in your way, and guard it carefully once you have it. And each time you raise a cup to your lips, feeling the warmth of it in your hands, you remember the journey it took to get there, from the frozen river, through the axe's bite, past the creaking rope, into the pot over the fire. In that moment, it is not just water. It is survival made liquid. The nights in winter are not like the nights of summer. In summer, night feels like a pause, a brief interlude between days, with the scent of grass in the air and the last glow of the sun still warming the edges of the sky. But in winter, the night is not a pause. It is a season within a season. The darkness comes early, and it stays. In the heart of winter, the sun might be gone by mid-afternoon. You finish your work in the fields or the yard under a dim, slanting light, watching the shadows grow longer until they finally swallow the world whole. There's no slow fade, no lingering glow, just the sun slipping away as though it wants nothing to do with what's coming next. When it's gone, the dark is total. There are no street lamps, no glowing windows from distant houses. Only the faintest smear of moonlight, if the clouds are kind enough to part. Even starlight feels thin, too far away to be of much use. Your eyes adjust, but the shadows remain thick, deep enough that you imagine things moving in them. Inside, the hearth is your only light. A single flame flickering in the corner, throwing shapes onto the walls. Shapes that sway and stretch like they have a mind of their own. Candles are precious and burned sparingly. They're small circles of light, just enough to see your hands, not enough to push the darkness from the room. You learn to work in shadow, to find things by touch, to listen for the sound of what you cannot see. And in that darkness, time changes. A winter night feels longer than it is. Without the distractions of light, every hour stretches. You can feel each one pass, the fire popping, the wind shifting, the slow settling of the house as it breathes in the cold. You wake from sleep thinking it must be nearly dawn, only to find the darkness still thick, the fire still burning low, the hours still ahead of you. The darkness has a weight to it. It's not just around you, it presses on you. It makes you quieter, slower, as though it's seeping into your bones. Your world shrinks to the space the fire can reach. Beyond that is the unknown, the cold, the wild, the things that roam in the night. For some, this weight is more than just the absence of light. It seeps into the mind, bringing thoughts you would rather not think. In the stillness, you remember losses, fears, mistakes. The silence gives them space to grow. There is no distraction to pull you away, no sound of birds or chatter of neighbors. Just the fire and your thoughts. Stories become more important in these nights. People gather close, family, neighbors, travelers, and trade tales in low voices. Stories of hunts, of wars, of spirits that walk in the snow. The tales are as much a defense against the dark as the fire is against the cold. They keep the mind from sinking too deep into itself. Sometimes the darkness is broken by the moon. A full moon on fresh snow is a strange sight. The world glowing with a cold light, shadows sharp and blue. You can walk in that light without a torch, though the air bites at your face and the sound of your steps seems too loud. But those nights are rare. Most are swallowed whole by clouds, the sky as black as the ground beneath your feet. When you must go out at night to fetch water, to tend the animals, to check on a neighbor, you carry a lantern if you can. The light is small, barely enough to see a few steps ahead. The wind makes the flame shiver. Beyond that small glow is an endless wall of dark, and you keep your eyes on the ground, not on the things your mind imagines moving in the trees. You come to respect the night, even if you fear it. You learn its sounds, the moan of the wind around the chimney, the snap of ice on the river, the creak of the roof beams as they settle. You know the difference between the normal and the strange. A normal night has a rhythm. A strange one makes you sit up in bed and listen. And always you wait for the light. When the first gray of dawn seeps into the sky, it feels like a gift. The shadows pull back. The fire seems brighter. Your chest feels lighter. You rise, stretch, and begin again, knowing that tonight the darkness will return, just as heavy, just as long. Illness in a medieval winter isn't just an inconvenience. It's not something you take a day or two to rest from before returning to your work. It's a threat, sometimes sudden, sometimes slow, but always serious. The cold alone weakens you. Your body spends so much of its strength simply keeping warm that there is less left to fight off sickness. The food you eat is plain, heavy, and meant for survival, not for building strong defenses. Fresh fruit, fresh greens, they're gone months ago. What remains is grain, root vegetables, salted meat, and whatever small stores of cheese or eggs you can keep. It fills the stomach, but it doesn't give the body everything it needs. A single cough in a small, smoky cottage can spread quickly. The air is shared, the space is close, and people huddle together for warmth. You hear it at night. The rasp of breath, the rattle deep in the chest, the soft moan of someone trying not to wake the rest. In these times, a cough is not just a cough. It can mean the start of a long illness, the kind that keeps a person in bed for weeks. Sometimes, it ends with them being carried out into the frozen ground, wrapped in the same blanket they slept under. Winter plagues are feared most of all. Not every year brings them, but when they come, they take without mercy. Fevers sweep through households, leaving people weak, shivering even under piles of blankets. Some lose their senses, muttering and crying out at things no one else can see. The skin grows pale, the lips cracked, the eyes sunken. Without physicians for the common folk, you turn to what you have: herbs, roots, and the old knowledge passed down through generations. Garlic and onions are eaten raw, their sharp taste believed to drive sickness away. Thyme, sage, and rosemary are steeped in hot water, the steam breathed in to clear the chest. Honey is mixed with vinegar to soothe the throat. Sometimes these remedies help, sometimes they don't. When they don't, you sit by the bedside, holding the person's hand, wiping their face with a damp cloth, feeding them small sips of warm broth when they can swallow. You listen to their breathing, counting the pauses, feeling the cold in your own chest as you wait. The village changes when sickness comes. People speak in hushed tones, avoiding gatherings. The church bells ring more often, slow and heavy. Neighbors leave food at each other's doors instead of stepping inside. In the deep cold, sickness feels even more cruel. A fevered person can't bear the heavy blankets, but without them, the chill seeps in and makes everything worse. Firewood burns faster in a sick room, the logs glowing brightly as you try to keep the air warm. But warmth is never enough. Children are most vulnerable. They weaken quickly, their small bodies burning through what little reserves they have. Old people too. Winter illness takes them silently, sometimes overnight. In the morning, you find the stillness, and you know before you even touch them. Those who survive often carry the weight of it for weeks after. The body recovers slowly. Strength comes back in small measures, like light returning after a storm. A person might walk to the hearth and sit, but they cannot yet lift a bucket or chop wood. You feed them more, letting them rest, hoping the sickness will not return. Some winters, the illness isn't just a passing cough or fever. Sometimes, it's something far worse, the kind of sickness that moves from one house to another until the entire village is caught. In those years, the graveyard fills faster than the woodpile empties. You learn to watch for the signs. The sudden quiet in a home that was once full of voices. The way someone's hands tremble when they lift a cup. The look in the eyes of those who've already buried one that season. And you learn to be careful. You wrap scarves over your mouth in the cold air, not for warmth alone, but in hope of keeping sickness from entering with each breath. You keep the hearth smoke flowing steady, believing it drives bad air away. You boil your water, not just for taste, but for safety. In winter, illness is a shadow you can't see until it's too late. And when it finds you, you fight it with everything you have. The fire, the herbs, the food, the prayers whispered in the quietest moments. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you don't. But either way, the cold keeps coming. It doesn't stop for the sick, and it doesn't stop for the dead. In the medieval world, animals are more than just part of life. They are life. The sheep give wool for your clothing, the cows and goats give milk for your table, the hens lay eggs when the days are long enough, and the pigs will one day fill your salted meat stores. Without them, the winter would be far harder, maybe even impossible. But the animals face the cold just as you do, and they cannot speak to tell you when they are suffering. You learn to read the signs, the droop of an ear, the way they stand, the sound of their breathing in the cold air. The barn, or byre, is their refuge. It's not warm by modern standards, no glass windows, no tight insulation. Just thick wooden walls or stone, a thatched roof, and the warmth of bodies huddled together. Inside, the air smells of hay, earth, and the sharp tang of manure. The floor is layered with straw, not just for comfort, but to trap heat beneath their hooves. You tend to them before you tend to yourself. In the morning, before you break your own fast, you carry armfuls of hay from the loft, letting it fall in golden heaps. The animals push forward, their noses burying into it, the sound of their chewing filling the still air. Hay is their winter bread, stored from the long days of summer, cut and dried under the sun, stacked high in the loft like treasure. Without enough hay, the animals will weaken. And if they weaken, they may not see spring. Water is harder to provide. The troughs freeze quickly, a solid sheet forming on the surface. You take the blunt end of an axe or a heavy stick and break through, letting the shards drift to the sides. Sometimes you haul water from the well or river, carrying it in buckets that steam in the barn's cold air. The animals drink deeply when it's fresh, knowing it won't stay liquid for long. The cold is hardest on the smaller animals. Chickens and ducks huddle together in their coops, feathers puffed, their breath visible in the dim light. On the coldest days, their eggs freeze before you can gather them. You keep the coop door shut against the wind, but leave a gap so fresh air can flow. Too much stillness and sickness will grow in the damp. The pigs fare better in the cold, their thick hides and fat keeping them insulated. But they still need shelter, still need straw to burrow into. You hear them shifting at night, snuffling softly, the warmth of their bodies turning their breath into slow clouds in the air. Horses, if you have them, are your strength through the snow. They pull sledges of wood from the forest, carry grain to the mill, and haul water when the path is too icy for you alone. Their coats grow long and shaggy in winter, and frost sometimes gathers along their manes in the early morning. You brush them when you can, your hands working warmth into their skin, checking their hooves for ice. In deep winter, the forest holds dangers for the animals. Wolves and foxes grow hungrier as the season drags on. A fox will sneak into a coop if the door isn't barred tight. Wolves are bolder, circling pastures when the moon is high, their howls carrying across the frozen fields. You keep watch when you can, your bow or spear close by. Every scrap you give the animals is a choice. The hay you feed them could have gone to the goat, the grain to the hens. You ration carefully, stretching the stores to the very edge. Some years you have just enough. Other years, the weak don't survive. It is a truth you hate, but in the medieval winter, not every life can be saved. Still, the animals give back what they can. A cow heavy with milk is a blessing. Fresh milk can be warmed by the fire, turned into butter or cheese that will last longer than the milk itself. Goats, smaller and hardier, provide milk even when the cows dry up. The hens, when the days grow just a little longer, begin to lay again, and those first eggs feel like a promise that spring will come. A soft word to the cow as you brush her side, a gentle scold to the hen that pecks too sharply at your hand, a praise to the horse when it pulls a heavy load. They don't answer in words, but in small ways. A flick of an ear, a stillness that means they trust you, the quiet munching when they are content. By night, when you step out to check on them, the barn glows faintly from the lantern in your hand. You push the door open, and the warmth greets you. Not the heat of a hearth, but the kind that comes from living bodies breathing together. The animals lift their heads, eyes glinting in the low light. You check the water, the hay, the doors, then close them in again against the cold. In spring, when the snow melts and the grass pushes up fresh and green, you will open the doors wide and let them out into the fields. But until then, the barn is their world, and your work is to keep that world safe, fed, and alive. Because in winter, the struggle to survive is not yours alone. Winter slows the body, but it does not stop the need for work. The land might be frozen, the fields empty, and the roads buried under snow, but life doesn't allow you to be idle for long. In the medieval world, idleness is dangerous. It wastes the hours when preparations could be made, repairs finished, tools mended. And worse, it leaves the mind too much room to wander into worry. The work in winter is quieter than in summer, but it is steady. Inside the cottage, every hand has something to do. By the hearth, wool is spun into yarn. The steady rhythm of the spindle is like a heartbeat, the fibers twisting together in an endless spiral. The yarn will become new garments, or more often, patches for old ones. The sound is soft, the whir of the spindle, the occasional crackle from the fire, the shuffle of feet on the stone floor. Clothes are mended by the light of the fire. Needle and thread pass through wool and linen, patching holes worn thin from months of wear. Every stitch is small, careful, meant to last. Some are purely functional, rough but strong. Others are neat enough to almost disappear. In winter, you cannot waste even the smallest scrap of fabric. The worn hem of an old tunic might become the lining of a glove. A torn cloak might be cut down into a child's jacket. Leather work fills many hours. Boots are repaired with fresh stitching, reins and harnesses checked for wear. A cracked strap could mean disaster in deep snow, so you run your fingers over every inch, feeling for weak spots. The smell of worked leather, sharp, earthy, fills the air as you rub fat into it to keep it supple against the cold. Woodwork is another constant task. You carve handles for tools, shape new spoons, repair the broken rung of a stool. The axe you use to split wood might get a new handle, the sled a fresh runner. Each piece of work is practical, but there is quiet satisfaction in shaping something with your hands that will serve you well. The children have their own winter work. They help twist straw into ropes, peel vegetables for the stew, feed the hens in the coop. Their smaller fingers are good for weaving baskets, strips of willow bending and twisting into shape. The baskets will hold grain, apples, or whatever can be stored when summer returns. And still, the outside calls for attention. Paths must be cleared after snowfall, not just for ease of walking, but to prevent ice from building into dangerous ridges. The woodpile is checked daily. Logs split when the weather is calm, stacked under cover so they stay dry. The barn is swept, new straw laid down, frozen troughs broken open for the animals to drink. In the deep of winter, when storms keep you shut in, there is another kind of work for the mind. Stories are told, old songs sung, riddles passed around to keep the mind sharp. The eldest in the house share their knowledge. How to tell the coming of a thaw by the way snow melts on the roof. How to recognize when an animal is sick. How to weave a fishing net so it will not tangle. These lessons are as much a part of survival as the food in the pantry. But even with work, the days can feel long. The same walls, the same tasks, the same faces. The light fades early, and the night stretches far. You find yourself moving more slowly, the chill in the air seeping into your limbs no matter how close you sit to the fire. To fight this, you keep to a rhythm. Mornings are for the hardest work, hauling wood, fetching water, tending animals. The body is strongest then, and the cold less biting. Midday is for tasks that need light, sewing, spinning, mending. Evenings are for work that can be done by firelight, or for rest when the day has been especially hard. Some winters, there is the unexpected work of helping neighbors. If a roof caves under snow, you go to lift it. If someone's woodpile runs low, you bring what you can spare. You know that the same could happen to you. And in the deep cold, the only way a village survives is by sharing its strength. Its payment is survival, the quiet satisfaction of knowing the clothes will last another season, the tools will hold another harvest, the fire will burn one more night. And when the first signs of spring finally come, the drip of water from the eaves, the softening of the ground, you will step into the thaw with hands that are calloused but ready. Because in the medieval winter, work does not wait for the warmth. It continues, steady and unglamorous, each small task another stone in the wall between you and the cold. The forest in winter is a different world. The leaves are gone, the undergrowth is flattened beneath snow, and the air has a kind of stillness that you can feel on your skin. Even the wind seems careful, moving slowly between the trunks as though it doesn't want to disturb the quiet. Hunting in this season is not sport, it is survival. The pantry shelves are shrinking. The salted meat will not last forever. A fresh kill means warmth, strength, and a little more time before hunger begins to sharpen its teeth. But hunting in winter is a harder task than in summer. The animals are fewer, leaner, and more cautious. They hear you sooner, see you sooner, smell you sooner. You dress in your warmest layers, wool tunic, thick hose, boots wrapped with extra cloth, and sling your bow across your shoulder. A quiver hangs at your side, the arrows tipped with iron, the shafts smooth from your hand's constant touch. If the snow is deep, you carry a spear instead, easier to use in the slow, heavy steps winter demands. The forest path is barely a path at all now. It's a narrow trail pressed down by the steps of those who've come before you, hunters, woodcutters, children gathering pine cones for kindling. The snow squeaks faintly underfoot, sound that feels too loud in the stillness. You learn to place each step carefully, rolling your weight to muffle the noise. Your breath hangs in front of you, rising and fading in the pale air. The trees around you are bare, their branches black against the gray sky. Pines hold on to their needles, their green, deep and rich, their scent sharp when you brush past. The world is painted in shades of white, brown, and muted green, as though winter has taken the colors and locked them away until spring. You look for signs. A trail of hoofprints pressed into the snow, fresh if the edges are still sharp. A place where the snow is disturbed, where a deer has pawed through to reach the grass beneath. Droppings, dark against the white. The broken ends of twigs where something has passed. Sometimes you follow for hours, moving slowly, your eyes sweeping the ground and the trees. The forest can feel endless in these moments, an unbroken pattern of trunks and snow, the horizon hidden by the thick weave of branches. If you are lucky, you spot movement. A deer standing still, its breath visible, ears turning toward every sound. You freeze as well, the cold biting at your cheeks. Your hand moves slowly, drawing the bow, the arrow sliding against the string with a faint whisper. In these moments, you feel every part of your body, the weight of the bow in your hand, the tension in the string, the beat of your heart loud in your ears. You hold your breath, aim, release. The arrow cuts the air in a silent arc. If it finds its mark, the deer leaps, stumbles, and falls. You approach slowly, not out of cruelty but respect, to be certain the life is ended quickly. In this world, the kill is not triumph. It is necessity. The work begins immediately. You dress the animal where it fell, your knife quick and practiced in the cold. The steam of its body rises into the frozen air. You save everything you can, meat for the pot, hide for clothing or trade, sinew for bowstrings. Nothing is wasted in winter. If the day's hunt brings nothing, you return with less to show, but still with something to use. Fallen branches for kindling, pine resin for sealing wood, maybe a rabbit snared along the way. Every small thing helps. The forest gives more than meat. There are herbs that can be found even under snow. Yarrow, pine needles rich in a taste of sharp green life. Sometimes you find mushrooms clinging to the sides of old logs, a welcome addition to a thin broth. And always there is wood, fallen limbs, dead trunks, the raw bones of the forest that will burn in your hearth. But the forest also has its dangers. The snow hides holes and roots that can trip you. The ice on a stream may be thin in places, sending you into water that freezes your breath before you can gasp. And in the deep woods, the wolves move. You see their prints, larger than a dog's, spaced in that steady, tireless pattern that means they are following something. Maybe deer, maybe you. When you leave the forest, the light is already fading. The snow that was white at noon is turning blue in the shadows. The cold feels sharper, cutting into your hands and face. You quicken your pace, the weight of the meat or wood pulling at your shoulders. In the distance, smoke curls from the chimneys of the village, a thin promise of warmth. Back home, the hunt's work continues. The meat must be cut, salted, hung. The hide must be scraped clean, stretched to dry. Your boots go near the fire. Your hands thaw slowly in the glow. The smell of stew, thickened now with fresh game, fills the cottage, and for a little while, the hunger is pushed back. The forest will wait for you. Tomorrow, or the day after, you will return to its quiet paths and its hidden life. Because in the medieval winter, the hunt is never done. Not every household can survive a medieval winter on its own. Even the most careful preparations can fall short. A poor harvest, a bad hunt, a sickness in the family, any one of these can empty the pantry or drain the woodpile faster than you planned. And when that happens, you turn to the only other source of survival you have, trade. The winter marketplace is not the bustling, colorful fair of summer. It's smaller, quieter, held in the heart of the village where the wind is broken by the walls of the surrounding cottages. No stalls covered in bright cloth, no fiddlers playing while children chase each other between the booths. Here, in the frozen months, trade is a serious thing. The ground underfoot is packed snow, stamped down by boots, hooves, and sled runners. The air smells of wood smoke from the nearby hearths, mingled with the sharper scent of smoked fish and cured meat. Voices are low, partly from the cold, which makes speaking feel like breathing glass, and partly from the knowledge that every exchange here matters. You bring what you can spare. Perhaps it's a basket of eggs from hens that still lay despite the cold. Maybe it's a skein of spun wool dyed with onion skins into a warm golden brown. Or perhaps it's labor, an offer to mend tools, to patch clothing, to chop wood in exchange for what you need. Coins exist, but for many, they're rare. The economy here is built on barter, on the value of what you can make or grow or gather. A loaf of bread might be worth a handful of dried beans. A day's work in the fields next spring might pay for a slab of salted pork now. The value shifts with the season, with the weather, with the desperation in a person's eyes. The market in winter is also a place for news. As you move between the traders, you hear the quiet murmurs. Who has been taken ill? Whose goat gave birth to twins? Which roads are blocked with snow? Whether the river ice is strong enough to cross. In a world without letters for most, this passing of words is as vital as the passing of goods. You approach a table made from a door laid across two barrels. Behind it, an older man stands, his cloak patched, his beard crusted with frost. On the table, he has strips of smoked venison wrapped in cloth. You greet him, your voice low, and ask the price. He eyes the basket on your arm. Inside are 6 eggs, carefully wrapped in straw, and a bundle of dried herbs from the summer garden. He thinks for a moment, then nods. You make the trade, feeling the weight of the meat in your hands. It will stretch over several meals if you're careful. The eggs he'll keep near his hearth. The herbs he'll use to flavor his stew. Both of you walk away with what you need. Neither richer, neither poorer, but both safer for another week. Some trades are harder. A woman with a thin face and tired eyes offers to trade her last blanket for a small sack of grain. You know what that means. She'll face the night with less warmth, risking illness or worse. But without grain, she and her children won't eat. Decisions like this weigh heavy in the marketplace. Sometimes you can help, sometimes you can't, and sometimes you walk away thinking about it long after the market is gone. The marketplace is also where outsiders appear. A traveling peddler might come, his cart pulled by a mule, carrying goods from distant towns. Metal knives, small mirrors, tiny cones of sugar wrapped in paper. In summer, these things might be bought for curiosity or pleasure. In winter, they are only worth what they can do to keep you alive. A new knife for butchering meat is worth more than the finest glass bead. Sometimes, the market is more than just goods. You might trade shelter for protection. A neighbor offering to help guard your woodpile in exchange for a place to sleep near your fire. Or you might agree to share the butchering of a deer, each taking half, rather than risk losing it to wolves while carrying it home alone. There is an unspoken code here. You don't cheat in winter, not if you want to live through to spring. A bad trade, a stolen item, a lie told over the worth of grain, these can cost lives, and the village remembers such things for years. When your trades are done, you wrap your cloak tighter and begin the walk home. The snow underfoot crunches in rhythm with your steps. The meat and beans in your pack are heavier than they were in the marketplace, not because of their weight, but because of what they mean. A little more time, a little more safety, a little more chance of seeing the thaw. Behind you, the market begins to thin. People carry their goods back to their cottages, disappearing into doorways that close quickly against the cold. The voices fade, the smoke drifts upward, and the open space becomes empty again until the next gathering. In summer, trade is about building a future. In winter, it is about making sure there is a future to build. In the heart of winter, the church becomes more than a place of worship. It is the anchor in a world locked in frost and shadow, a place where warmth is not always from fire, but from the presence of others, from the rituals that bind a village together when the days are short and the nights are long. The church sits at the center of the village, its stone walls weathered and pale under the winter sun. The roof is steep, shedding snow down into high, frozen banks. The bell tower rises above it, a dark silhouette against the gray sky. In summer, the bells call for feast days, weddings, and harvest blessings. In winter, their sound is heavier, for holy days, for prayer, for funerals. Inside, the cold still follows you. The air smells faintly of incense and beeswax, but beneath it lingers the chill of stone, the kind that sinks into your bones no matter how long you sit. Candles burn in iron holders, their flames shivering in the drafts that slip through the cracks in the old doors. The light is soft, golden, casting shadows on the worn carvings of saints and angels. Faith is not a distant, abstract thing here. In winter, it's a living part of survival. People pray not only for the health of their souls, but for the safety of their families, for the return of the sun, for the strength to make it to spring. The priest speaks of patience, endurance, and hope, his voice echoing against the stone. You listen, not because you expect miracles, but because the words make the cold feel less vast. Winter rituals carry a different weight than those of summer. Christmas is the brightest of them, not in the abundance of gifts, which are rare, but in the feast prepared from what can be spared. in the candles lit in every window, in the songs that rise like warm breath into the cold night. It's a pause in the hardship, a reminder that joy still exists even when the fields are bare. Candlemas comes after, when winter still holds the land, but the days are slowly lengthening. People bring candles to be blessed, believing they will protect their homes from storms and sickness. The warm glow of dozens of flames fills the church, and for a moment, the cold outside feels far away. In between these great days are the smaller ones, the saints' days, the blessings of the fields, even under snow, the prayers for those who are ill. The church marks the passing of winter not in weeks or months, but in moments of gathering, each one a small victory over the loneliness and darkness. The churchyard tells its own story of winter. The ground there is hard, frozen. Digging graves in the cold months is slow, grueling work. The earth must be broken with picks before spades can dig. When someone dies, the bells toll, low and slow, their sound carrying across the snow. Neighbors gather, the breath of the mourners rising in pale clouds, the prayers spoken in voices tight from the cold. Death in winter is harder, the loss sharper, when the world already feels stripped bare. For many, the church is also a place of shelter. When the wind howls and the snow is too deep to reach home, travelers might sleep on its wooden benches, wrapped in cloaks, the candles burning low. It is not warm, but it is dry, and in the heart of winter, that can be enough to save a life. Faith in these months is not about comfort. It is about endurance. The prayers are simple, the hope direct, that the food will last, that the fire will burn, that the sickness will pass, that the spring will come. In the deep cold, these prayers feel as tangible as the bread on the table or the wood on the hearth. When you leave the church, stepping back into the pale winter light, the snow crunches under your boots. The sky is low, heavy with clouds, but you carry with you a little of that candlelight, a little of that shared warmth. It's not enough to melt the snow or turn the wind, but it's enough to keep moving forward. Because in winter, faith, whether in God, in the land, or simply in the will to survive, is another kind of fire. Children in a medieval winter live in a world shaped by limits. The cold is not just a background discomfort. It is a wall that shapes where they can go, what they can do, and how they spend each day. But even within that wall, there are moments of light, of play, of learning. The mornings come late for them. Not because they sleep longer, but because the sun itself lingers below the horizon. They wake under layers of wool and linen, pressed close to brothers, sisters, or cousins on straw beds for warmth. Their breath hangs in the air when they speak, and the first thing they do is reach for their cloaks or tunics, pulling them over cold skin. There are chores, even for the youngest. Fetching kindling from the woodpile, carrying water in small buckets from the well, scattering grain for the hens, checking the straw in the animal pens. These tasks are as much about teaching responsibility as they are about survival. In winter, every hand, no matter how small, helps keep the household going. Play is different now. In summer, children run in the fields, climb trees, splash in the streams. In winter, their world is smaller, and play often happens indoors. They carve small animals from wood, twist bits of yarn into dolls, roll bones or pebbles for games. They sit near the hearth, their laughter soft so as not to disturb the work of the adults. But the snow also calls to them. When the wind is calm and the day not too bitter, they tumble outside, boots crunching on the frozen ground. They throw snow at each other, roll it into crude shapes, slide on the icy patches until a parent calls them back. Their cheeks glow red, their breath turns into thick clouds as they laugh, and for a short time, the cold is forgotten in the joy of movement. Winter teaches them endurance early. They learn to keep their hands wrapped, to drink water even when it's cold, to eat every bite of food given to them. They see what hunger does to people, how illness can change the mood of an entire household. They hear the quiet conversations between parents at night, the worry in their voices when they think the children are asleep. Schooling, if there is any, is shaped by the season. In some villages, the priest teaches letters and numbers to a few children, the lessons held in the church or in a corner of a larger home. In winter, these lessons are shorter, the cold makes sitting still for too long painful, and the light fades quickly. Much of what children learn now is from watching and doing, mending clothes alongside their mothers, tending animals with their fathers, helping older siblings with cooking or repairs. They also learn the stories of their people. Winter evenings are for tales told by the fire, stories of ancestors, of saints, of spirits that walk the snow. Some are warnings, teaching caution. Others are meant to give hope, reminding them that spring always returns, no matter how long the cold lasts. These stories settle into the children like seeds, growing into the beliefs and customs they will carry all their lives. Holidays are moments of magic. Christmas, with its candles and shared meals, is a wonder to a child, even if the gifts are small: a carved toy, a piece of honeycomb, a scarf knit by a grandmother. These are treasures, not for their value in coin, but for the love they carry. But winter is not without its dangers for the young. The cold can be cruel to small bodies. A walk to the well without proper wrapping can mean frostbite on fingers or toes. Illness spreads quickly among children huddled together indoors. And hunger. Hunger leaves its mark, slowing growth, stealing energy, making eyes seem too large for their faces. Still, they find joy where they can. In the sparkle of sunlight on untouched snow. In the crackle of the fire when a log shifts. In the warmth of a shared blanket and whispered games before sleep. In the first signs of thaw, when they can feel the earth soften under their boots again. For medieval children, winter is both a teacher and a test. It teaches patience, that the snow will not melt just because you wish it to. It teaches care, that your brother's coat is as important as your own. It teaches gratitude, that a hot meal and a warm bed are not to be taken for granted. And it tests them, asking them to be strong in ways that children today may never know. When spring finally comes, they run outside with bare heads, their voices carrying across the fields. But deep inside, they remember the long nights, the dim mornings, the quiet work by the fire. And they know, even as children, that winter will come again. When the work of the day is done, and the shutters are closed against the cold, the hearth becomes the heart of the home. Its glow is more than warmth. It's a stage, a meeting place, a refuge for the mind as much as for the body. In the medieval winter, when travel is dangerous and darkness comes early, the hearthside arts, music, storytelling, and the crafts of the hands are the threads that weave the long nights together. Music is not an everyday luxury. In many homes, there are no fine instruments, no trained singers. But music still lives here, in simple songs passed down through generations, in rhythms tapped out with hands on knees, in voices rising softly in the dim light. A carved wooden flute might hang near the hearth, its notes sweet but faint. A small drum, stretched with animal hide, may beat a slow pulse while someone hums along. The songs are not all cheerful. Some are ballads of long-ago battles, sung in low tones that carry the weight of history. Others are laments for lost loves, or warnings against pride, greed, or folly. But there are also lighter songs, playful rounds, nonsense rhymes, tunes to keep children awake just a little longer before bed. The familiar melodies wrap around the listeners like a second blanket. Storytelling is the other great hearthside art. The best storytellers are not always the oldest, but they often are. Years have given them a memory full of tales and a patience to tell them slowly, letting each pause pull the listener closer. There are stories of saints, their lives told in simple words, their miracles retold as though they happened only last winter. There are legends of heroes who faced the cold with nothing but a sword and their courage, of maidens who outwitted giants, of humble farmers who outlasted winters harsher than any alive can remember. Some stories are meant to teach. A tale about a greedy man who hid his grain until rats took it all. A warning about wandering. Alone in the snow, wrapped in the image of a spirit that lures the unwary into the drifts. These are as much lessons as they are entertainments, shaping the minds of those who listen. The storyteller's tools are simple: a good voice, a sharp memory, and a feel for the room. They know when to lower their tone so everyone leans in, when to pause so the fire's crackle fills the silence, when to let their words paint pictures vivid enough that you forget the cold entirely. Around the hearth, hands are never idle. While one person plays or speaks, others work, mending nets, carving wooden spoons, braiding rope from straw, whittling small toys. These tasks are not distractions, they are part of the rhythm of the night. The work keeps the body warm, the mind steady, and the household moving forward even in the stillest season. The crafts made in these nights carry the memory of them. A spoon carved in January might feed a child for years. A woven basket from a snowbound evening might one day hold apples from the summer harvest. These things are not made for beauty alone, but they carry beauty in the way they are shaped by necessity and care. Visitors change the flavor of the night entirely. A neighbor arrives with news, bringing a new song or story from another household. A traveler caught in the snow may share a tale from a distant town, of markets bigger than the whole village, of beasts in the mountains, of rivers so wide they never freeze. These stories stretch the walls of the cottage, letting imaginations roam far beyond the frozen paths outside. Children listen most closely when they think no one is watching. They sit near the fire, eyes wide, fingers toying with bits of string or carving chips of wood, their minds building pictures they'll remember long after they've grown. Some will tell the same tales one day, changing them in small ways, but keeping their bones intact. Music and stories are not just for the home. At festivals, when the church bells call the village together, the hearthside arts spill into the larger world. Songs are sung in groups, with clapping and stamping to keep time. Stories are told by the loudest voices, the ones that can carry over the wind. In these moments, the community itself feels like one great hearth, every person adding their warmth to the whole. When the night grows late and the last song fades, the fire burns lower. People drift to their beds, still carrying the rhythm of the drum in their minds, the echo of the storyteller's voice in their ears. Outside, the snow lies deep and still, the cold pressing close to the walls. But inside, for a little while, the darkness has been held back, not just by fire, but by words, by music, by the small acts of creation that turn survival into something more. Because in the medieval winter, warmth is not only in the hearth. It's in the stories that live there. For most of winter, meals are quiet, simple affairs. A bowl of porridge in the morning, bread and broth at midday, stew in the evening, thickened with root vegetables, and whatever scraps of meat can be spared. But every so often, the rhythm of the season is broken by something rare and precious, a feast. Feasts in winter are not about excess for the sake of it. They are about marking moments, the turning of the year, a holy day, a wedding, a birth, or even a safe return from a long journey. In the frozen months, these gatherings are more than just meals. They are celebrations of survival, of being together in a world where the cold keeps everyone apart. Preparation begins days in advance. The hearth is cleaned, and the largest cooking pots are brought down from where they hang unused. Wood is stacked high beside the fire. Women knead dough for bread, the flour sifted from the best grain in the store. Men fetch meat from the smokehouse or cellar, a whole ham perhaps, or a joint of beef salted since autumn. The smells begin to fill the air long before the guests arrive. Roasting meat, baking bread, the sharp scent of onions and herbs. A pot simmers on the hearth, its steam curling into the rafters. Someone tends it constantly, stirring with a long wooden spoon so the thick stew doesn't catch at the bottom. By the time the feast begins, the table, often just a long board on trestles, is laid with the best the household can offer. It is not the abundance of a noble's hall, but it is rich by village standards. Loaves of bread, their crusts browned and crackling. Bowls of pottage, a thick, hearty stew set between platters of meat. A dish of dried apples softened in honeyed water. Cheese, hard from the cold but still rich in flavor. And there is drink. Ale brewed in autumn, carefully stored in casks. For special occasions, perhaps a little wine, traded for in the last market before the snow came. Cups are filled, hands warmed by the clay or wooden vessels, voices growing louder as the drink begins to ease the stiffness from the cold. The shared table is more than a place to eat. It is where stories are told, news is shared, and laughter rises in bursts like sparks from the fire. The room feels warmer with every voice added to the hum, every clink of a cup against another. Even those who sit quietly, hands wrapped around a bowl, feel the comfort of not being alone. For children, a feast is magic. They watch the platters arrive, their eyes wide at the sight of more food than they see in a week. They're given slices of meat thick enough to fill the mouth, pieces of bread still warm from the oven, sweet treats reserved only for days like this, perhaps a bit of honeycomb or a baked apple spiced with cinnamon if such luxuries can be had. But a feast is also about sharing what you have. If the occasion is large enough, neighbors bring what they can: a crock of butter, a jug of milk, a dish of turnips or carrots, a string of smoked fish. These offerings are placed on the table alongside the host's food, turning it into something greater than any one household could make alone. The conversations drift between the practical and the joyful. How the hunting has been. Whether the ice on the river will last until spring. The health of the animals. The latest news from the church. Then a song might begin, soft at first, then joined by others until the whole table is humming or singing in unsteady harmony. Feasts often stretch late into the night. As the fire burns low, people draw their cloaks tighter but linger anyway, unwilling to step back into the silent dark. The glow from the hearth and the warmth from full bellies make the outside world seem distant, almost unreal. When the time comes to leave, guests step into the night with flushed faces, their breath rising in clouds. The snow crunches under their boots as they make their way home, the echoes of laughter and the taste of rich food still fresh. And in the days that follow, the memory of the feast lingers. It's a reminder that even in the hardest season, there can be moments of abundance, of warmth, of being surrounded by voices and hands that mean safety. It's proof that survival is not only about enduring the cold, it's about finding ways to live fully in spite of it. Because in the medieval winter, a full table is not just a meal. It is a promise that the community, for this night at least, has enough. In the medieval winter, danger is not dramatic or sudden. It is quiet, patient, always there. It waits for the moment you forget how close the edge is. The cold is the first and most constant danger. It doesn't strike all at once. It seeps in. You step outside without your cloak because you think the air isn't too sharp today, and by the time you return, your fingers burn, your toes feel heavy, and the color has drained from your skin. Frostbite starts small, pale patches, stiff joints, but if left too long, it blackens, kills the flesh. And once a part of you is taken by the cold, it doesn't come back. Hypothermia is worse and far quieter. It comes when your body gives more heat than it can make. You begin to shiver, then the shivering stops, and that's when the real danger begins. People grow slow, confused. They start to speak less, to slur their words, to stumble like they've had too much ale. Some even feel warm again, a cruel trick of the dying body, and begin to strip off their clothes. In winter, you watch for these signs in your family, in your neighbors, because you know they might not see them in themselves. Hunger is the second danger, and it gnaws constantly. Even in a well-prepared home, the stores are not endless. Each day takes something from the pantry, from the smoked meats, from the barrels of grain. The question is not if the food will run low, it's how low it will run before the thaw. Hunger dulls the body's strength. It makes you slower to rise in the morning, weaker with the axe, less steady when carrying water. And once it has taken too much from you, it can't be given back quickly. Illness is the third danger, and it is made worse by the first two. A body weakened by cold and hunger can't fight sickness well. Even a simple cough can sink into the lungs and take someone away within days. Fevers burn fast in small cottages, passing from one person to the next. The air inside becomes thick with breath, with the smell of damp clothes and smoke from the fire. There is no easy escape, only care, herbs, and hope. Isolation is the fourth danger. It's not as obvious as cold, hunger, or sickness, but it can be just as deadly. When the snow is too deep, when storms make the roads vanish, you can go days, weeks, without seeing anyone beyond your own door. If something happens, a fall on the ice, a sudden illness, a chimney fire, there may be no help coming until it's too late. In winter, a village may be together in spirit, but each house is its own small island in a sea of snow. And then there are the sudden dangers, the ones that give no warning. A roof buckling under the weight of snow. A chimney collapsing in the wind. A thin sheet of ice. On the river, giving way under your weight. A tree branch breaking without sound until it crashes down, burying the path you walked only minutes before. Travel in winter holds its own risks. A journey that takes an hour in summer can take a day when the roads are iced and the snow is deep. The cold drains you with every step. You stop to rest, thinking it will only be for a moment, and the stillness makes it harder to rise again. Travelers sometimes vanish between villages, found only in spring when the thaw reveals the places they fell. Animals can be both friend and threat. Wolves grow bold when hunger drives them from the forest. Foxes slip into barns and coops. Even domesticated animals can be dangerous when stressed by cold and hunger, a startled horse, a frightened ox. The snow carries sounds far, but it muffles others, hiding danger until it's already close. And always, there is the danger of fire. The hearth that keeps you alive can also take everything you own in minutes. In winter, the thatch is dry, the walls are brittle with cold, and water is harder to find quickly. A single spark onto a blanket, a log rolling from the fire, and the room can fill with smoke faster than you can think. You tend the flames carefully, not just to keep them burning, but to keep them under control. What makes winter so dangerous is that it rarely kills with one blow. It chips away at you. A little warmth lost here, a meal skipped there, a small injury left untreated because the healer is 2 miles away through deep snow. These small things add up until the line between living and dying is thinner than the ice on the river. Yet the people who survive know this. They move through winter with caution, but not fear. They layer their clothes, they guard their food, they watch the sky for signs of weather. They share news, warn each other of dangers, and lend help when the thin line begins to fray for one of their own. Because in the medieval winter, survival is not luck alone. It is the constant, careful choosing of life, every hour, every day, until the snow melts and the earth is green again.